Africa group, we value our partnership with you as well. So today we are talking about the importance of emotional intelligence for specifically the world we work in. But please note that everything that we are talking about today is actually whether you are working or not, whether you are a stay-at-home mom or whether you are a student. This is actually extremely important and relevant for the life that we also live in. So it's not only work-related. I've got thousands of slides and thousands of things that I would love to share with you. So the pace is going to be real quick. And also what I would like to do, if possible, I would like to get some participation from the audience as well, specifically the type session or the chat box. If you can take part, that will be great, just to make sure that everyone stays awake. Okay, and now I just need to get my slides to move. Okay, so the objectives for today is to understand what we mean when we talk about emotional intelligence, to also understand the relevance of emotional intelligence in terms of personal and professional functioning, then also to look at a framework that can really help us to understand what emotional intelligence is, and also to understand how what elements consist or contribute to our own achievement and to in terms of our professional and our personal goals. And then also to give some knowledge and tools which can help you to enhance your own emotional intelligence. Maybe just as a side note, very often people will talk about EQ, and now you will see I use the term EI or the abbreviation EI. So EQ stands for emotional quotient. So it's when we measure, it's like IQ, intellectual quotient. So looking at the measurement of it, we usually link a score to that. Whereas EI is emotional intelligence without having measured it. So here and there, I might mix my terminology, but for today, I'm not talking about the measurement as such. Where we do that, I will actually let you know. When we look at that screen, maybe I would like to ask everyone in the audience in the chat box, if you think about the world of work currently, what words come to mind? How would you describe the current world of work? I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and I would love you to be chatting away in the chat box. Flexible, thank you, Lebo. Agility, thank you, Frank. Changing. Okay. Flexible, agility, changing, rewarding. That's a nice one. Contact versus non-contact. Absolutely, this virtual work we're working in, paradoxical, motivational, work-life balance is very often an issue. Keeping all the balls in the air. What else? I see we've got 20 participants, so we need at least 15 more words. Looks to me as if we've got a very boring work life. Challenging, thanks Neil. Growth. Okay, and Shira, I guess you also mean we need to be growing and we need to be learning, and yeah. Okay, stressful. Thank you for that. And one last one, all the time, yes. Growth mindset, thanks Christelle. Okay, so I think most of you are quite wide awake now, but when I thought about the world of work, these words came up as well. So you'll see there's some of them that you also mentioned, but it's volatile, it's uncertain, we're working remotely, it's a fast pace, it's hybrid. The organizational and cultural change, we have to cope with collaboration, we have to use electronic platforms. automation, change, reskilling, and yeah, so I think very much in line with your ideas about the world of work as well. And now what I would like to ask you to is to, in the chat box again, in order to cope with these changes and these challenges and the agile workplace, what characteristics do we need as humans in order to cope effectively with these changes, these challenges, these hardships, these joys, these new things? What do we as individuals need? Agility, 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 adaptability, inner strength, resilience, adaptability, reality testing, stress management. Yeah, Frank, you know the EQI very well, I think. So you've got an extra advantage here. Being open-minded, knowledge of self, empathy, infinite mindset, listening skills, being positive and optimistic, unlearning the old, being open for learning. Wow, this is a great embracing change. Fantastic. I think you all have it. Now, if we think about that, none of you actually said, you need to be very skilled in what you do. You need to have a high level of technical skill or a high level of functional skill. Most of you actually related, or you also didn't say you have to be very clever, have a high level of IQ. Now, we would assume that would also be useful. But when we look at what you mentioned, it was more the personal characteristics, and that's precisely what I ask. So what I would like to do is make a distinction between two types of skills that the world of work needs. So the world of work needs technical skills or functional competencies, and those are very often related to intellectual ability, or related to what did I study, or related to what's the specific content. I mean, for example, as a psychologist, I need to be able to understand psychometric assessments. That would be a technical skill or a functional competency. I would need to be able to give feedback on those assessments. I need to be able to write reports. For an engineer, you can imagine you need some understanding of mathematics. You need to be able to work out whether this bridge is going to stand or not. You need to be able to supervise the building of this bridge. Maybe not as practical as that, but so a lot of functional competencies. And on the other hand, we have behavioral skills or people skills. And at JVR Academy, we like to call them power skills. And these skills, if you go and read all the literature on the workplace and the changes and the challenges and what COVID brought and the hybrid workplace, we see that more and more people place a value on these behavioral skills that are also very important for effective functioning in the workplace. And we would rather, we would call them or relate them more to emotional intelligence. So maybe just quickly, IQ and versus EQ. The one is definitely not more important than the other one. People who are strong believers of emotional intelligence will tell you emotional intelligence is much more important than IQ. It's not the case. IQ is equally important. It's like a bird with two wings. The bird can only fly high and effectively and safely when they use both wings. So I definitely don't, if I go for brain surgery, I need a very clever brain surgeon, but it will also be very nice if that person has nice bedside manners, because research has also shown that people with, or doctors with good bedside manners, that their patients actually heal much quicker. So if we talk about emotional intelligence, we need to have a specific definition. And the definition that we like to use is put forward by Multi Health Systems, who also designed an assessment that we will quickly talk about. And they say emotional intelligence is a set of emotional and social skills that collectively establish how well we perceive and express ourselves. So we need to understand ourselves first and only once we understand what is going on inside, if we understand what our strengths are, what our development areas are, then we can actually express ourselves more effectively. And we know that self-expression is extremely important in terms of communication. And specifically, if you think in terms of the world that we work in currently, that's online, very often we don't have that opportunity, and very often communication is getting impeded. Talking about self-expression doesn't mean sharing everything that's going on inside and sharing all your deepest secrets and emotions. That's not what we are talking about. It's just, for example, if you feel that someone is walking over you, to be assertive and to really in an effective way tell that person that, you know, what you are doing now, you know, it's not working for me, or can you please do it differently? So perceiving and expressing ourselves, developing and maintaining social relationships, interpersonal relationships, extremely important in the world that we work in. So emotional intelligence also speaks of those skills that's necessary to build trust and develop trust and to maintain these social relationships. Then also emotional intelligence refers to a set of skills that establish how well we use emotional information in an effective and in a meaningful way, specifically in order to make decisions. So if something is going on emotionally with you, if you maybe not in a good mood, how does that impact your decisions? What's the type of information that you use to make those decisions? And then one that relates very much to what everyone has mentioned in the chat box is coping with challenges and coping with changes, also referring to stress management. So emotional intelligence refers to a set of, it's non-cognitive. It's not like IQ related, but it's non-cognitive emotional and social skills. And just remember that we need the cognitive skills. You need the engineer with high level of IQ that design and build, or the bridge needs to be safe. And then also you need one that can actually, the same engineer with a high level of IQ needs to be able to work effectively with other people in the team as well. And then only he will be, and cope with his stress and all of those things. And then he will be a much better performing engineer in the workplace. So why is emotional intelligence important? If we think in terms of the business case, maybe just a little bit of international research. Center for Creative Leadership has identified that in terms of managerial success, when people are rigid, when they cannot handle change, or when they have poor interpersonal relationships, or if they cannot work in a team, those aspects has a negative impact on their success as a manager. And you will see the words are repetitive from what you said in the chat box as well. Also another international study that managers with high levels of emotional intelligence achieve a 34% profit growth and much lower turnover and higher customer satisfaction than the ones with lower emotional intelligence. Just think about yourself, which if you have a manager that doesn't have a high level of social, and now if you visit a restaurant where the manager is rude and the manager doesn't treat the staff well, do you really want to go back to that restaurant as well? Also, emotional intelligence drives higher employee engagement levels. And we would love, in all organizations, we would love our employees to be engaged in what they do, because there's a strong correlation between work performance and employee engagement. People who are more engaged in what they are doing, they are also happier and they stay longer, and all the investment that you've done in terms of their own development is actually worth your while. Then in terms of salespeople, those with a higher level of optimism or learned optimism, at least, sold 37% more life insurance. So they were more successful than pessimists, for example. And you'll see that optimism is one of the core elements of emotional intelligence as well. Now, interestingly enough, learned optimism means that some of us are born with a higher level of optimism. It's maybe part of our personalities, but if you are not born with a level of optimism, you can actually learn that as well. And then also stress, coping with stress. People who are handle stress better in terms of being a retail store manager, they were more successful. Now, very excited to share with you all today is a very recent study that JVR Psychometrics, one of our sister companies, they've got a research department or product and research department, and they did a study where they looked at performance, general performance, the relationship between general performance ratings. So other people had to rate the employees in terms of what they show and in terms of their behavior in the workplace. And they look at the relationship between those ratings and also the emotional intelligence scores that people completed. And just a little bit of the research, and I'm not going to go through all of this, you can look at the slides later on, is people who had higher scores in terms of emotional intelligence, when we measured, when they completed an EQ assessment, they received high ratings on managing stress and staying calm under pressure. So more EQ, higher EQ, being able to manage stress better, being able to stay calm under pressure better. And remember, these ratings wasn't self-ratings. These ratings were rated by their managers, by their colleagues. It could be a friend or so as well, but it's in terms of the workplace. So what do people see in the workplace? How do I cope with stress? So people who have high levels of emotional intelligence, managing stress better, dealing better with unusual or complex situations, much better with effective decision making, specifically when there's a crisis involved as well, being open-minded towards the views of other people, people with high levels of emotional intelligence also supported their teams to reach their goals. So sort of making sure that all the horses go into the same direction and get the load where it needs to be. Then also higher scorers on emotional intelligence embrace change better, and they encourage new ideas, and they also use networks to connect with their teams. So also good interpersonal relationships. So if I just look at this one page, there's no two ways about it, in my mind at least, that we need to work on our own emotional intelligence in order to have an impact on the functioning in the workplace, and in the end to reach the strategic goals and contribute to the bottom line. But we're not finished yet. Also, people who score higher on emotional intelligence are more accurate in terms of their work, especially if we think about detailed work and if we think about data analysis and all of those things that really has require a lot of accuracy. Achieving and exceeding work-related goals. They champion the organization's principles. Specifically, if people are more engaged, then of course they will be championing the organization principles and goals as well. They also demonstrate high levels of technical expertise at work. With that technical, we don't only mean technology, we rather refer to the competencies, the work competencies, the functional competencies of what each and every person in their specific job needs to be able to do. People who are higher scorers on total EI, they are more proactive. They take charge of their own learning and development, and they spot opportunities and generate new ideas. So very good in terms of being entrepreneurial or entrepreneurial as well, if you have a high level of emotional intelligence. And then just the other way around, people who have higher levels of emotional intelligence, They are much less rude and inconsiderate to co-workers, so they have better interpersonal relationships. They people who are high on emotional intelligence, they score low on lacking motivation. So they are actually much more motivated to complete their task. They are not opposed to constructive feedback. They are actually open for that. And then also they are open to learn new skills. Remember, these are negative correlations. So just not to confuse that. So that's on an organizational level, where we say emotional intelligence shown that in terms of individuals, this is how individuals with higher levels of emotional intelligence can actually contribute to the output and to the functioning of the organization. Now, how can it help you as an individual? So this is in the workplace, but this is also on a personal level. Just how with being more positive about yourself, accepting yourself more, being less impulsive, and we'll talk a little bit more about impulsivity in the workplace as well. Looking at controlling our tempers better, coping with stress, balancing work and life. And someone mentioned that as well, making better decisions and solving conflict. So really, there's a good business case for emotional intelligence and why we do that. And maybe just as a side note, so JVR Academy does a lot of emotional intelligence or many emotional intelligence programs within organizations. And it's interesting to see how more and more people are open for that. Even previously, there's some job types or some job categories that were actually quite pessimistic or not so optimistic about the impact of emotional intelligence, but we see the shift in that because they realize that in this world of work where we currently work and with this hybrid workplace and with all the uncertainties, that it really makes a difference in terms of their individual and personal functioning. Nice to have fun here. Is there any questions maybe at this stage while I take a sip of water? Anyone that would like to, that has a question in the
Karina, I'm very curious. I don't know if you can touch it, but when I look at it, it's very similar. You know, post-COVID, people were talking about now AI, you know, the adaptability, intelligence. I mean, is there a point to do AI? Because it looks like a lot of what you're talking about covers also AI, but other elements that not covered. I'm just curious because of what COVID had raised.
Yes. So with AI, artificial intelligence, Ariella, I think it supports the idea that we need to have high levels of emotional intelligence, because artificial intelligence is where, and there's lots and lots of research about that as well, is where we say so many things are getting automated. People are scared because the machines and the robots will take over our jobs. And there's research that has shown that in, let's say, the next 5, 3, 2 years even, many of the jobs will become obsolete. Many of the skills that we have become obsolete. And those would be the skills where it's more repetitive kind of work, lower level computing tasks. There's a whole list that had been highlighted. But the good news about that is that it will free up time for people to actually work more with other people, spend more time on the important personal and interpersonal skills as well. So if people who are getting scared of the idea that I'm not going to have a job because machines are going to do everything, that's the good news is it's not true. But the skills that will really matter will be the higher level cognitive skills. It will be the emotional and social skills. It will be things like critical thinking, communication, and if you want to make sure that you don't lose your job to a computer, then you need to work on your personal and interpersonal skills, your social skills as well. I hope that that makes sense, Ariella.
Yes, most definitely. Thank you.
Label asks, do you feel being nice is important as an important skill for a leader, or should leaders focus more on results, just making sure the work environment isn't toxic? Label, that is such an interesting question. It all depends on how you define being nice. So if you are too nice and you're only nice and you don't focus on the results of the business, then you are not going to be a good leader or a good manager, and the business is not going to be able to afford you anymore. But what is very important is to find the balance in order to be, let's say, be nice, but or to have a good interpersonal relationship, build trust, be understanding, have empathy with your team members on the one hand, but also have a good level of reality testing to say, you know what, if I'm just nice and if I just accept all the excuses that everyone brings on a daily basis, but when I look at the bottom line, nothing is happening there, then it's going to cause a lot of stress. It's going to help your business not to work. So it's very important to also engage with everyone and to have that good interpersonal relationships, but also focus on the task, with finding that balance. And then, of course, the making sure the work environment isn't toxic. Maybe that's another topic that we can look at, and I'm not a specialist in toxic workplaces. But yes, it's very, very important to make sure that the environment isn't toxic. And we know that toxicity in the workplace is very often related to personal characteristics of individuals. So sometimes you have that leader or you have that other person in the organization that even if you try to teach them emotional intelligence, it's very often part and parcel of the personality, which you cannot really easily change. So yeah, that's a complete different topic, but label, trying to find the balance, always trying to think about the bird with the two wings. So it's also focusing on niceness, maybe on the one hand, but also focusing on the task that needs to be done. Good. Yes.
Sorry, okay. You said now that toxicity is, it could be summed up as being related to individual personality. Is that also related to personality clashes? Is this where clashes actually come in? And how do you avoid that?
Yeah, Philip, like I said, I'm not the specialist in toxicity in the workplace, but remember, we must be able to work together in the workplace, and we would expect that we find personality clashes in the workplace because we are all individuals and we have different makeup, we have different traits, we've got all of that. So we should be able, and we want that as well. We want conflict in the workplace, but it's how we deal with it. How do we deal with the personality clashes? How do we understand one another? If I know where you are coming from, because this is your personality makeup and this is mine, I have an understanding for that, but we can, with the clashes and with the conflict, we can deal effectively with that. That is ideal. But sometimes if there's almost pathology involved, and pathology is, personality pathology is very difficult to get rid of.
Yeah.
And so that's where the issue might come in.
So just very quickly, that would go to the clash. You said the clashes can be positive or negative, and it's how you react or anticipate what a situation is going to look like and how to avoid that or face it head on and how to deal with it.
Deal with it, not avoid it, deal with it. If you don't have conflict in the workplace, it always feels as if no one is going to challenge me in what I'm saying. It's going to be a very boring workplace, and there's no real opportunity for growth. But it's how someone
reacts.
Yeah, a product. What do I do with it? Am I open to those changes, and am I at least open to hear the different viewpoints? Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Philip. Okay, let's try. I'll try and find someone for a next topic to talk a little bit more about conflict in the workplace or workplace toxicity. Okay, let's get going. Can emotional intelligence be developed? I always say yes, thankfully so, otherwise I wouldn't have a job. I'm not going to show you a video, but please go and Google Dan Siegel. He's a neuropsychiatrist, I think he calls himself, or in the field of neurology. Dan Siegel, and he's got a hand model of the brain where he literally uses his hand and he folds it like this, and this resembles the brain. And then also you need to listen out for the 3 parts of the brain, and that he will talk about the brain stem, and he will talk about the middle part of the brain or the limbic area. And then he will also talk about the cortex, where the more IQ related functioning sit. But the prefrontal cortex is where emotional intelligence and reasoning is where they are getting integrated. So please go and listen to that. And there's a number of them that you can use. It's always also wonderful if you have children to actually use that to explain to children how does it work, how do I react to things. For example, if I flip my lid, then it means I need to calm down again, and I need to bring my cortex needs to talk to my emotions again, and I need to close that loop again. So a very interesting, easy to understand way of the brain. Maybe just to the 3 parts of the brain, the reptilian brain, which is the one where it has to do with flight, fight, and freeze. The automatic reactions that we have. If you think about if you walk in the street, in a dark street, that we shouldn't be doing in South Africa, but if you walk there and there's someone behind you, immediately what you want to do is you want to run away, or you want to freeze, or you do that. It's automatically, you don't think about it. So that's the reptilian brain. Then in the middle of the brain, if we put our thumb in the middle of our hand, that's where the limbic brain or the midbrain is, or where emotions are situated. And that's where our memory for emotions are also situated. And then you will see the neocortex, the purple part is the best developed in human beings. And the prefrontal cortex is, you'll see it's very close to the emotional part of the brain. So this is where regulation takes place. This is where, I need to put thought into how I deal with my emotions and how do I react to situations. So if you can, just as a quick overview. Then what we very often talk about is amygdala hijack. So in the middle of the brain where the emotions sit, we have the amygdala, that's part of the limbic systems. And when something happens where, let's say, for example, you lose your temper, or if we think about road rage, for example, where someone gets out of his car because he's not happy with what someone else has done, he gets out of his car with his baseball bat, or he gets out. I've very recently read, again in the news, there have been a couple of situations, people got up out of their cars, just went to the other car and shot the person. So that's actually where the amygdala is getting hijacked. There's too much emotion involved, there's no control of the emotion, and there's no cognitive reasoning. And in that moment, when we are so angry, or when we are so depressed, or so we don't think clearly, And that's where we say the amygdala is getting hijacked. And as part of emotional intelligence, we need to be able to realize my emotion currently is I am furious at this guy who hooted at me, because who does he think he is? And in that moment, my crocodile brain takes over, and my crocodile brain says, go and kill that person because he is actually an enemy. He is taking up space, and he's rude to you. But then what I need to be able to do is to realize I have those emotions. And then I need to say, okay, let me get out of the car, let me go and sit under the tree for a while, or let me take deep breaths, or just calm myself down, so that the cognitive part of my brain, the reasoning part of my brain can calm down again, or help my emotions to calm down. So part of emotional intelligence is to tame the beast, that crocodile brain. So always think about the crocodile that you need to tame. Now, can we measure emotional intelligence? Like with anything else, if you go to the doctor and if you need to have a measurement of your blood pressure, for example, the doctor will say, well, it's good, keep on doing what you are doing, or he will say it's too high, take this medication, do this exercise, stop eating fatty foods, whatever. Or if it's too low, he will also prescribe some medication or some activities. So same with emotional intelligence, we measure it, and the measurement is the first step towards improving it. You can only work on something that you are aware of. You can only change something that you are aware of. So the model that we use, and some of you on the school, I know you know this model very well, is what we call the EQI 2.0 model. The 2 is the second version of a model that had been developed previously. And it's always very important for us to have a framework to break things down in smaller bits, so that you have a very good understanding of what do we mean when we say emotional intelligence. And when we break it down like this, you will see it's nothing uncommon. It's nothing, it's no terminologies or no constructs that we haven't heard of before. And once you know this, you can actually also start managing yourself better, even without the measurement. So the EQI 2.0 measure that we use is based on the structure as well. We say emotional intelligence is the overall construct, right in the middle, and it consists of 5 big building blocks: self-perception, self-expression, interpersonal decision-making, and stress management. And each of these 5 bigger building blocks consist of 3 smaller building blocks. It's almost like you have the grandmother, and the grandmother has 5 sons and daughters, and each of them has 3 children. So all of these things are related. On this level, the cousins; on this level, the siblings of this parent. So everything is related. So if you, for example, if we say self-perception, and we'll go through all of these quickly just now. If you say self-perception, your self-regard, for example, your self-confidence is low. You can just imagine how it's going to impact your assertiveness. If you don't believe in yourself, how are you going to stand up for yourself? How are you going to solve problems effectively if you don't believe in yourself? And how are all those things going to impact your level of stress? So all of these things work together. And if you work on the one, if you become a little bit more self-confident, it will definitely impact all of the other things as well. So let's say, for example, we go through the elements quickly now. And if you think, okay, I need to work on my assertiveness, go and work on your assertiveness, and maybe just work on your assertiveness for now. Don't work on all of them at the same time. You rather focus on one thing at a time. And if you work on assertiveness, you will see it will anyway have an impact on the rest of your functioning as well. And the outer ring, you will see that all of these things have an impact on our well-being, on our happiness, on how well we function in the workplace as well. Now, with self-perception, we talk about the inner strength and what's going on inside, and understanding ourselves and understanding what we need in order to function effectively. And they consist of these three building blocks: self-regard, self-actualization, and emotional self-awareness. I know I'm going to rush through all of this, but you will have the slides as well. And you are more than welcome to contact us afterwards as well if you would like to have more information on this. So very important that you have a very good understanding of your own personal function, your own strength, your own desires, your own dreams and goals, even in the workplace. So people with a healthy self-regard, for example, you need to strive they are self-assured, satisfied with themselves, accepting of themselves, they have a high self-esteem, and they feel good about themselves, and they are confident. Now, I think what is very important is that we need to realize that too much of a good thing is not a good thing. So you can imagine, maybe I can ask in the chat box, if someone has too much of a self-regard, too much self-assured, too satisfied with himself, what will that look like? Anyone in the chat box? Vanity. What else? All of us know people like that. Maybe sometimes we are like that ourselves as well. In your face, arrogant, ignorant, egotistic. Okay, you've got it. So if we say you have a high level of self-regard, we need to distinguish between whether it's too high, too much of a good thing is not a good thing. If it's too high, then it's a development area. If you realize, if people tell you all the time, yes, you think too much of yourself, oh, it's you again, your opinion again. Do we have to listen to you again? Hear that, because then it means I need to lower my self-regard. So too much is also not always healthy. Too little is also not healthy. So we need to find that balance. So that's self-regard. The next one is, okay, this is a video that I wanted to show you, but I'm just demonstrating that too much of a good thing is not a good thing, but we don't have time for that. Then in terms of self-actualization, it's one of the other building blocks of self-awareness or self-perception. Means you want to grow, you want to set goals, you want to learn more, you want to develop your potential. And in the world of work, this is extremely important. And this also relates a lot to a growth mindset. When we need to be agile, we need to be able to grow. And it's important that in all areas of our life, we need to be able to have these goals, not only in terms of our finances or in terms of our careers, but also in terms of our social life and our relationships and our health, for example. So we need to be able to develop all those. And then very important, like I mentioned, if I'm furious, I need to realize that. I need to be aware of my emotions. So it's being in touch with my emotions, but also being in touch with other people's emotions, being able to read other people's emotions. So being really open and understanding what emotions mean and what they look like. And it's interesting, if I'm going to ask you to name 15 emotions, you are going to struggle probably. So maybe on a side note, try and write down as many emotions that you experience on a daily basis. And you will be surprised to see how little you actually come up with. And it has to do with our emotional vocabulary. And although there's only 6 or 7 main emotions, all of these have finer nuances. And it's very good if you can distinguish between, you know, when am I angry, when am I furious, when am I dissatisfied. It's all part of the same emotion, but it's different degrees of the same thing. So very important, specifically also to recognize your hot button. What are those things that really upset you or that really push your buttons? For example, one of my hot buttons is when someone pushes in front of me whether it is in the parking lot or whether it is in the checkers line, and when they stand too close to me. I have quite a big personal space around me, so don't come and stand too close to me. But instead of just reacting, instead of my crocodile brain taking over, I know that. I know this is my hot button. So when someone is pushing in front of me, I need to, in that moment, tell myself, is it really important to address this now? This person only has, 3, 4 items, let him go in front of me. Or is it someone with 5 trolleys now pushing in front of me? Then it means, okay, maybe I need to be assertive here. So be aware of what is really pressing your hot buttons. Good. The next one is self-expression, the next building block. Now, if we don't understand who we are and have a good understanding of ourselves, then we cannot express ourselves effectively. So talking in a constructive way, expressing your feelings in a constructive and socially acceptable way. And the 3 small building blocks is emotional expression, assertiveness, and independence. So if we quickly run through those, people who have a high level of emotional expression, they are open books, they express themselves easily, they are real, they're more in touch emotionally. Too much of that is someone that's a drama queen, someone, if they enter the office, you want to duck and dive away because this person is so noisy and so overexpressive and taking up too much energy, or using too much energy in the office as well. But the same is true of someone that's too low on emotional expression. If you don't know what's going on inside, if you don't know when someone is happy with your suggestion in the team or not, then how are you going to gauge what is going on and whether the person is happy with your suggestion or not? Assertiveness, we shouldn't confuse assertiveness with aggression. So too much assertiveness may come out as aggression, but assertiveness really means you can express yourself easily, but defend your rights in a non-destructive manner. Okay, still value the other person's opinion and still not being abusive. Okay, so assertiveness is a very important element to develop. And then also independence. Can you act self-directedly? Can you be self-determined? Can you make decisions on your own? Now think about if you have a low level of self-confidence, you are probably going to struggle to do this because you're not going to trust your own decisions. So in the world of work, we need to be able, if you, for example, see, this is a new task on my desk. How am I going to cope with this new task? You need to be self-directed and you need to be able to say, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to maybe either ask my colleagues, how can I do this? Or I need to go and Google it, or I go and watch a video on how to do something. So not being too dependent on other people all the time, but also being able to function independently. We've got 7 minutes for the next 3 main building blocks. Interpersonal skills or social skills are extremely important in terms of the workplace, and they form an integral part of emotional intelligence as well. So the 3 building blocks for that is interpersonal relationships. Empathy is huge in the workplace these days. We are more and more doing programs in organizations where it's leading with empathy or teamwork with empathy. So it's really an important buzzword these days as well. And then also social responsibility, where we can't tell ORT anything or anything about social responsibility. Okay, in terms of high social or interpersonal relationships is the ability to establish good, mutually satisfying relationships, but also to maintain those. And what are the things that we need to do there? And all of these things have to do with things like listening skills, with communication, and there's a whole lot of things that you can do to work on your interpersonal relationships. A very good was it Stephen Covey who said that relationships are like bank accounts. So in order to withdraw money, you need to be able to put money into the bank account. So if you want to ask a favor from a colleague in the workplace, you need to make sure that you've done some favors before as well, so that you actually have relationship money in that account. If you're asking for help, you need to also reach out, and you also need to reach out. If you don't put back into the relationship, if you don't put money into your piggy bank, then you, at one point in time, you will just withdraw and withdraw and withdraw. And your colleague will say, no, sorry, your bank account with me is closed now. There's no support. So it's a two-way street that we always need to remember. Empathy is putting yourselves in the shoes of other people. Too much empathy means people are going to walk over you probably, and you are going to burn out. So there's all sorts of risks in terms of too much empathy, and too little empathy will have a negative impact on your relationships. Then with social responsibility is we all need to also, and it looks different for different people. Some people belong to groups, whether it's at church or whether it is a social group. It's what contribution are you making? Or even if it's just, I'm caring about the environment, and therefore I make sure that I separate my rubbish into plastic and recycling and all of those things. So it looks different for different people, but we need to also have the skill to give back to where we find ourselves. Decision making, very important emotional intelligence skill as well. So it's how do we solve problems? How do we, are we in touch with reality, or do we have our head in the clouds all the time? And then also impulse control. Now, the one that I want to maybe just focus a little bit more on, you will be able to look at the slides, is impulse control. Impulse control has shown, there's lots of research that's shown that being able to control your impulses, being able to manage your emotions, being able to think before you act is extremely important in terms of success in the workplace, in terms of academic success, in terms of interpersonal relationships. So there's a very fantastic study that had been done many years ago in the 60s by Walter Mischel at Stanford University, and he called it the Marshmallow Experiment. And for those of you who've done psychology before, you will definitely know about this experiment. Or what you can just do is you can type into Google the Marshmallow Experiment, and there's actually some adverts that use that experiment to also show that, those people who wait, there's more benefit in that. What Walter Mischel's research has shown is that people who have a higher level of impulse control, they are more successful, they get better ratings from their peers, they get better ratings from their lecturers, from their bosses, all of that. So, and they also are more effective in the workplace. And this has all to do with Rex, or with the crocodile brain. So think about, how do I control my impulses? You need to put the crocodile on a leash, and you need to tame that leash. And that is how you will be able to work on your impulse control as well. Yeah, that was just an ad. Then the last one, stress management. Lots of research in terms of people who cope better with stress, of course, who cope better with unfamiliar, unpredictable circumstances. Think about the world of work. They function much better. Also people who are more hopeful about the future, and then also people who are resilient in the face of setbacks and obstacles. So those people will function more effectively in the workplace. Nice to see you, Aletta. You also know the assessment and the model very well. Great. So in terms of the smaller building blocks, we need to be flexible. We need to be open for new ideas. We need to be able to adjust our way of doing things in order to reduce our stress. We shouldn't just only have one way of doing things, because then you're not going to cope effectively with your stress. In terms of stress tolerance, what are the things that you are doing to cope better with your stress? There's certain things, and there's some basic things like what do you eat, how much do you sleep, do you get exercise? And then one big other one is optimism. Let me just go to optimism. Optimism, people who are more optimistic definitely are more happy in the workplace. They function more effectively in the workplace. They will say, you know, today it was a terrible day at work, but tomorrow is a new day, and there's a new, the sun will be shining again. And that is also, some people are born with that. It comes more natural to some people, but also you will be able to learn that as well. If you are aware of the fact that your optimism is low, then at least you can start thinking, start changing your thinking, and challenge your own negative thought patterns. Just the very last one is you will see at the outer ring of this model, we see well-being. And with well-being, we also refer to happiness. So people who have higher levels of emotional intelligence, and we are talking about the overall construct now, but don't forget about all the 15 smaller building blocks and the 5 big building blocks. If we can improve those things, we will definitely have a higher level of well-being and a higher level of happiness. And I'm not going to show this to you because I'm over my time, but very recently there was on social media a video doing the rounds about how a smile or how a laugh is contagious. And so maybe what you can just type into Google or YouTube is guy on train laughing, and it's just very, I think it was a social experiment. Okay, and this brings me to the end of the session, and sorry for going 1 minute over time.